ever get that feeling that you've been going about things all wrong? That maybe now is the time to approach things from a different perspective? Well, I've definitely been experiencing these intrusive thoughts lately, so I guess it might be time to act on them. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So far, I've been building this robot from the tip to the base. And basically, a lot of this was just to hedge my bets against the inevitable screw-ups that were bound to occur. Like this one, where I completely blew the dimension on this shaft fit. And ultimately, for a part this size, this isn't that big a deal. It's maybe $10 in aluminum and a bunch of machining time. But when we start to move down the robot, the parts get a whole lot larger, and therefore more expensive. So my screw-ups just get progressively more painful the further I continue on. And honestly, I really can't complain about my strategy so far. I definitely think my machining is improving as I go, and I'm already tempted to redo some of my early parts. I said tempted. I'm not going there. Yet. But the real problem with this approach is that I have nothing to attach all these components to, and I don't exactly have heavy lifting equipment in my shop. So when it comes to the largest pieces of the robot, the bicep for example, well, let's just say my best approach is to build that on top of existing components, rather than try and assemble it into one structure first. So it's time to conquer my fears and start to tackle this project from the other way around, and from the ground up. So this robot needs a base. Something I'm embarrassed to say has been kind of a big question mark up until this point. But how exactly do we go about designing and building one? Well, first we do a little market research. Look at what all the other robots do, and see if we can draw a little creative inspiration from them. So in this class of robot, we usually see a big hollow cylinder that forms the base of joint 1. A cylinder because it's the best shape for resisting bending moment. Plus, it's the best shape for providing clearance around the base of the robot. On top of it all, we have a big cross roller bearing that serves as the main connection point between the base and joint 2. And it's the combination of joints 1 and 2 that essentially form the shoulder of the robot, and this makes the base the greatest load-bearing structure on the robot. And it doesn't just have to support all the weight of the components above it. It also has to resist all that acceleration force generated by the joints moving at high speed. And if you don't think these forces are massive, just watch an unbalanced washing machine dance its way across a room. Same idea. And at the very bottom, there's usually a plate that provides the mounting provisions for attaching the robot to a pedestal. Near the base of the cylinder, we have a harmonic drive or similar gearbox that drives the joint 1 output. And often this gearbox is directly coupled to the main output bearing. So that means a shaft to connect the two together. Then a giant servo is somehow crammed in there as well. Oh, and a bunch of cabling too. So this actually makes this shaft really complicated when you start to think about it. And yeah, pretty much every part of this design is utterly impossible for me to make. For starters, I can't machine such a large diameter outer cylinder, and even if I could afford the stock costs, none of my machines could handle a piece this size. Next, the shaft that connects the gearbox to the output bearing, but somehow makes room for the servo, and allows the cabling to route through. Yeah, that's not going to happen either, and for mostly the same reasons. The usual solution to these problems is casting, and finish machining them on large industrial machines. And none of that is going to happen in my little shop. So it's time to approach these problems a bit differently, and think about it all from a manufacturing first perspective. So first off, we can reduce the resolution of the cylinder and make an octagon, and this lets us make a cylinder out of flat plates. The top of the octagon will be capped by a top plate that provides the mounting points for the output bearing, the beefiest cross-roller bearing I've been able to get my hands on. The underside of the top plate has 8 pockets to align the sidewalls. And now to the gearbox. Since the crazy shaft is out of the question, I've decided I'm not going to directly drive the gearbox with the motor. This is going to make cable routing a lot easier, since the gearbox has a handy hollow shaft to allow for this exact situation. So that means I need to find another place to mount the servo motor. So I designed a plate for locating the gearbox, and this plate would also provide an adjustable mount for the servo motor. And a belt will run on the underside of the plate to transfer that motor power to the gearbox. And the slots, in combination with these screw jacks, will allow the belt to be tensioned. Since we now need space for the belt and cabling, we'll need one final plate to cap off the bottom of the cylinder. And this bottom plate provides the mounting points we'll need to bolt the whole robot down later. Last but certainly not least, we need our shaft that will connect the gearbox to the output bearing. But I'm going to cover that more at a later date, since I have quite enough to work on already. So those familiar with my shop setup might have already noticed one glaring flaw in this whole plan. I've got some very big plates that I need to manufacture. Plates that are way too big for my machine to handle. I would have to break some of the parts up into at least 3 setups per side just to even attempt it. And at that point, my chances of achieving any accuracy on those parts just seems kinda low. There are just so many sources of error. So that's probably it. We're dead in the water. Is what I would have said if JLCCNC hadn't reached out with an offer to sponsor this video. Well, that's convenient. JLCCNC is your trusted machining partner, offering fast, affordable, and high-precision custom parts for makers, engineers, and businesses alike. And whether you're prototyping or scaling up, JLCCNC helps you bring your ideas to life, exactly how you designed them. So I double-checked the design, then triple-checked the design, and JLCCNC's website came in really handy for this, as they had really good design guidelines I could follow. I uploaded my CAD files and some sketchy drawings to their website, and then I selected from a few different options like material and surface finish. And it was as simple as that. So whether you need 1 part or 1,000, JLCCNC offers competitive pricing with no hidden setup fees, and they can deliver as fast as 3 days if you need parts on a deadline. So this makes using JLCCNC a no-brainer when you just need a little extra help like I did. And when the parts came in, well, it felt like Christmas morning unwrapping all that bubble wrap. And the parts arrived in perfect shape, and I do have to say they look fantastic. The finishes are excellent, and this base plate is tough and heavy duty, and should serve as the perfect foundation for the robot. I had called out higher tolerances for the mid plate and the top plate, so these ended up coming in a brushed finish, which looks pretty great. And most importantly, the critical tolerances on all the features are in spec, and the fits are spot on. Use my link in the description to get a $70 coupon to JLCCNC, and start making your parts starting at $1. Thanks so much JLCCNC for sponsoring this video, and now back to it. Speaking of outsourcing components, I went ahead and acquired that big cross roller bearing and the most massive harmonic drive gearbox they make, at least off the shelf. And yeah, seeing this thing in person really drives home how real this project has become. Yeah, this robot might kill someone. We ain't in CAD world anymore. So now it's time to get my stock all prepped. This 6061 stock is 3/4 of an inch thick, and definitely pricier than any of the material I've been using up until now, so it was pretty important to optimize the layout to get the most out of the stock. And to be honest, the stock really pushed the limits of my little bandsaw. I might be starting to outgrow this little thing. So, it's mass manufacturing time. And unfortunately, my pallets are a little too small to handle more than 1 plate at a time. So I'm going to work on each part individually, which is probably most definitely a huge mistake. But luckily, these parts have fairly simple features. There's a groove that will support the mid plate. Then the plates need to slot into the pockets on the top and bottom plates. So the outer dimensions are fairly critical. And I also need every one of these plates to be more or less identical along the long axis. It's less important that the height is 100% accurate, but it's critical that all the side plates at least match. So machining these is a 2-setup job. First we square up the rough outline of the part. Then comes roughing in the groove that once again has to fit up with the mid plate from JLCCNC. Next comes the facing pass, which cleans up the top surface of the stock and gives us a nice reference face for the next setup. Then comes finishing. To get the fits correct, I worked my way up on the first part to the final dimension, and when everything was good, I programmed those same progressive steps into the programs for the subsequent parts. And by doing it this way, I don't have to worry about tool deflection. Every part is finished using the exact same operation as the previous. And since I'm using a dedicated finishing tool, I really don't have to worry about tool wear with this small batch of parts. So in theory, they should be identical. And this wraps up setup 1, and so far the plan seems to have worked because dimensions for all 5 plates are spot on. So now it's time for setup 2, which is pretty much as simple as it gets. I started with machining a straight edge to my sacrificial pallets so that I could get the parts aligned. Next, the plate was superglued to the pallets, and the origin was re-established with the 3D touch probe. And then I could start making chips with a facing pass to bring the part to final depth. And then came the countersinks, which were kind of interesting. My spindle isn't capable of using traditional countersink tooling, and my chamfer mill isn't large enough to tackle these M8 countersinks. So my solution is interpolation. I used a 3D adaptive tool path to roughen the shape, and finished it out with a contour pass, and this actually did a pretty decent job of approximating a countersink. I was originally going to finish these off on the manual mill, but I think this is going to work just fine as is. Last step is to machine in some threaded bores that will provide mounting points for a cover plate in the future. So it was time for my favorite op, thread milling. And once again, remember, this all happened 5 times. So yeah, I definitely should have made bigger sacrificial pallets so I could machine more than one plate at a time. I'm an idiot. These 5 plates will make up the front half of the octagon base, and once again they slot into the bottom plate and the top plate pockets. And here's where we start to see where theory and reality meet. It definitely takes some strategy to get the plates all lined up. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine, if you will, a monkey with a mallet banging repeatedly on a metal plate. And that's exactly how it went here. I'll spare you the carnage. And who am I kidding? We all know you're here for the carnage. So may I present to you the assembly of the first 5 plates. A play in 6 acts. And we're having alignment issues. On this top plate. Here. Okay, we'll try this again. Yeah. I did it wrong. I did it wrong. So that's the front, but remember the rear half needs to accommodate for mounting the servo. So we need to do something a little bit different for the last 3 parts of the octagon. And we need to leave space for the belt to run from the motor to the gearbox. So my solution was to narrow up the next 2 side plates. And these machined up pretty much exactly like the first 5, except they went a little bit faster. And of course, this completely derailed my assembly. Yeah, I'm not really gonna do that bit again. Let's just say it was a lot more of the same until I got to this point right here. And then there's this T-shaped back plate which bridges the gap between the mid plate and the top plate. So I cut the blank roughly to shape and got it all positioned up. And then literally just machined up a big T. Setup 1 was finished up with a facing pass and the threaded bores for my cover mounting. And a chamfer, don't forget the chamfer. So setup 2 was just a quick facing pass along with a chamfer, and this part was good to go. And we're finally getting towards the end of machining. So this plate slots into the mid plate, and then fits into the pocket on the top plate. So all we need to do is slot this into this slot here. Slot. Is we're going to come around this way, and we're going to pre-slot it in first here, and then we just slide it on. All right. So it's time for a Hail Mary, and we'll see if we can remove the top plate and slip the T-plate in. Oh, hey. Since the T-plate doesn't extend all the way down to the base plate, we need another way to distribute the load. So we need 2 side plates to frame out a box structure to support that final leg of the octagon. And these plates also serve to add rigidity to the servo mounting plate. These plates are mirror images of each other, and again feature grooves that will lock everything down. And once again, the bottom plate has a slot to aid in aligning all of this later. Despite its odd shape, setup 1 for this part was pretty similar to the others. The outline and the groove were roughed out, followed by the bores for the mounting hardware. Next came a facing pass and the finishing passes, and I was essentially able to use the same settings as the previous side plates to finish off the slot. So that saved some time and effort. The main issue here was to just keep in mind that these two parts are mirror images of each other. Setup 2 once again starts with facing the part to final dimension. Then the counterbores for the mounting hardware were roughed in and finished. Last step was the 2 large bevel cuts that would finish up the final shape. And do I really need these bevel cuts? Not really, but they look nice, and they provide for an alternative to these odd shapes for dealing with sharp inside corners on pockets. And I've been wanting to play a bit more with actual 3D machining, so this should be interesting. Because once again I'm stuck with the fact that my chamfer mill is way too small to handle this feature. So it's time to do some interpolating. And a 3D adaptive roughing pass took care of the basic shape of the beveled edges. But now I'm left with a bunch of stair-stepping on these edges. So it was time to do a bit of experimenting with a ball end mill. I started with some latitudinal finishing passes, and the results were looking pretty good. But the stair-stepping was still there. And these parts would work as is. But now I was curious how much better it could be, so I ran a longitudinal finishing pass, and well, this took forever, but damn, the results are pretty amazing. The finish definitely passes the fingernail test. Pretty cool. Finally, I could finish up setup 2 with a very fancy 3D chamfering pass, and the same process completed the mirrored part. And that finally wraps up all the machining for the frame of the base. And now we can finally slot in these 2 side plates.
Servo plate. Slide over back. Oh, this is already a little bit of a tight fit.
I've now shown you the most complicated way possible to make a cylinder. And now this project is finally starting to feel very, very real.
Lift it. Oh yeah.
And if all this doesn't work out, I now have the foundations for the most over-engineered garbage bin in history. So there's that. So thanks for joining me, and thanks again to JLCCNC for sponsoring this video. And don't forget to check out my other videos by clicking here. I'll catch you on the next one. Click.